Hello, everybody. Hello, all friends of Casa Árabe. Today, we are so pleased to release this YouTube online conversation with our own honor guest, Shahira Mehrez, who is joining us from Cairo and who is really accompanying Casa Árabe on our beautiful trip that we have started some months ago in order to present to the Spanish audience the enormous and important personality of architect late Hassan Fathy, to whom we have devoted an exhibition that has been displayed in our headquarters in Madrid and can be seen now in our headquarters in Cordoba. So for all those visiting Spain and Cordoba in the coming months, please do not hesitate to go down into Cordoba and visit the place, because you can know more about this important architect of the 20th century. And this today is a beautiful occasion because, as I said, Ms. Shahira Mehrez is joining us. She's been a witness of the life of Hassan Fathy, and besides being a very important person with regards to the culture of Egypt in the 20th and 21st century. She's a MA degree in Islamic art and architecture from American University in Cairo, and has conducted postgraduate research at Oxford University. She has taught at the Hilwan University, and she has really been a great and very important person on the preservation of heritage, Egyptian heritage, and very much related to costumes, which is her a very important area and field of expertise, great expertise. She has been she's a great designer. So it's really great occasion to have her here. I say hello to Shahira, who is seated in her house in Cairo. And together with her is Cándido Creis, the cultural attaché of the Spanish embassy in Cairo, who has been the intermediate and the facilitator for this encounter, and actually is who brought us the idea of enriching this activity that Casa Árabe is undertaking, counting on her as a partner for a conversation. And of course, to finish presenting this session, I have to welcome José Tono Martínez, Tono, our dear friend Tono, who is the curator of the exhibition and who is going to be the one really dialoguing with Shahira on the life of Hassan. A great job curating the show, but this is not new. He's a curator with a very long-standing experience in Spain. He's a writer, he's done so many things. He's a humanist in a way. He's really tackled so many things, but sustainability and sustainable issues, which are very much embodied on the figure of Hassan Fathy, has been always very important on his preoccupations. So Tono, welcome as well. Hello.
Thank you very much.
So let's start. Tono and Shahira, you have the floor, and I will be managing the images from my computer.
Please. Well, thank you very much, Nuria. Thank you very much, Cándido. My pleasure, Ms. Shahira Mehrez. I will call you Shahira from now on for our people. Well, really, Hassan Fathy is one of the myths in architecture of the 20th century. And it is very important for all of us to present his work here in Spain and in many other places. The title of this exhibition is Hassan Fathy Against the Current, or Off the Beaten Path. And this, in a way, reflects a little bit what we want to present here, which is the idea of an architect that he was really a sort of Don Quixote, trying to fight the modern movement in the early 20s and the early 30s. But only at the very end of his life, he started to being recognized around the world. Today, his example is much more important than it was during his lifetime. And this is because that he opened trends that were important for all of us. The idea of sustainable construction, the idea, for instance, of introducing the wind power in the houses to cool the houses, the idea of working with vernacular architecture working with the people, trying to empower the poor people. This is one of the agendas that was very important for Hassan Fathy at the time, trying to work with the felatin, the people, the poor people that were unable to build their houses, the idea of self-help, working with the people to build their own houses, the idea of working with the old métier, the old constructors of doors, of windows, etc. All this vernacular vocabulary that he developed was also very much intertwined with the idea also of recovering the old Egyptian tradition, the pharaonic tradition, the Nubian tradition, not only because of something really stylistic. In the idea of Hassan Fathy was also the idea of working with cheap elements and with traditional elements, because he always said, we don't have many resources, for instance, to build with window glasses here. We need to go back to our old tradition and to build the way we were working together. That's why he was incorporated, and we will go now to the first image. He was incorporating, for instance, the idea of working with mud brick. If now you show us one of the first pictures of Queen Hatshepsut, we will see that Hassan Fathy was adamant in going back to this old pharaonic tradition. He also was very fond, as Ms. Shahira Mehrez, Ms. Shahira knows, of all the people working in Egyptology at the time, like Alexander Stoblaere, the one director of construction in Tebas. And I would like to see the first comment of Shahira, because this is Queen Hatshepsut. And it is very interesting because at the time when Hassan Fathy was working in 1922, there are two very important things that happened that you will remember. Egypt gets independence from Britain, and Howard Carter discovered the Tutankhamun tomb. So the whole society is impressed by these two important facts. 1922 is a crucial year. And then the young people, Hassan Fathy has 22 years old at the time. And many people like Mahmoud Mukhtar or Hassan Fathy, they go see the past and they see, we are Egyptians. We are Egyptians. We are not only Arabic, we are not only Abbasi, we are not only Ottoman, we are Egyptians. We have to see the past. We have to go to the ancient past and recover our old tradition. And then Hassan Fathy looks back to Hatshepsut. What do you think about that period of the Nahda, of the recovery of the old Egyptian thing?
I think that what you said, of course, is extremely important, that there was this awakening of an identity. But I think that throughout the world, Egypt became fashionable, if you want, by the end of the early 20th century. But Hassan Fathy was something else. He wanted to make use of the past to build a better future. And he never excluded any area. He started with the pharaohs because many of our traditions at the end of the 20th century were still related to pharaonic traditions, but they were being lost. So his idea was different in a way from the Egyptomania that came through the Carter discovery of Tutankhamun or the discovery of the West, of Egypt by the West. His was going more to the basics and how this can help building a better future for the peasants and the Egyptian villagers. So it was going deeper, not as superficially as in the rest of the world.
Great, I think it's important. Here we have the Mahmoud Mukhtar sculpture of the Renaissance of Egypt, which was very important at the time, which is also a little bit Art Deco. What do you think? Because we see here the peasant, the felatin, and what do you think about this picture? What evokes to you? What is your impression when you see the picture of this sculpture?
Of course, I am a big admirer in a way of Mukhtar. He died very young, so we don't know how he would have developed later, because he again wanted to go back to an Egyptian identity. And even if he was a bit, if you say there's this effect of Art Deco, you have to remember that the first minimalists in architecture and in sculpture were the pharaohs. They were the ones who stylized everything. and removed all of the superficial features to show the most important, the most vital one. So in a way, what today we can see as an effect of the Art Deco in many ways is also a revival of the minimalism of pharaonic art.
Okay.
But what I want to say is that again, this is this was a very limited movement, because at the same time as there was Mukhtar, there were a very large movement of painting that was.
Well, okay, we have made a jump here a little bit with Ahmed Hassanein. He was a friend. Hassan Fathy got married with his sister. And can you tell me something about this period? Because he was also a great explorer. And in a sense, he was linked. Many people say that Hassan Fathy was linked to the elite society, but he was not very happy with being close to that elite society, and he wanted to be more close to the felatin, to the poor. In part because of, they say that because of his mother, which was from Turk origin, teach him to love the poor people in the countryside. Can you tell us something about this?
I think that again, this relates to the title of your exhibition, the going against the current, because Hassan Fathy could have made a very brilliant career as a normal quote unquote architect if he would have joined the masses, but he decided to go against. I mean, in the 1930s, trying to ask the rich to build, taking care of ecology, of the environment, of a lot of ideas that up in Egypt, at least up to the 60s, were like talking Chinese. So a lot of people minded him because they said, what does he want? He wants to bring us back to live in the past. This is this man wants to destroy Egypt. We want to be contemporary. We want to be modern. They never saw his idea of making use of experimental and empirical traditions that had taken thousands of years to solve problems, to solve the problems of the 20th century. So again, had he joined the masses that were around the palaces and played the role, he was from a grand bourgeois family that was had land ownership. So he again went against the current. It is true that his marriage to Aziza Hanem was again confirming this belonging to the upper classes. But though he several times mentioned to me that she was the only person he really felt in love with, the marriage did not last because he felt she was too much identifying to the ideas of that time that was very much pro-Western. And he made this joke about why it didn't work. And he said she was liking Western architecture and Arabic music, and I liked Western music and Arabic architecture. So this is how he defined, if you want, the reason for the failure. He was not ready to belong to the rich and play the role of the architect for the rich. Maybe he used to say, these are not my clients. My clients are the 800 millions doomed to premature death because of poor habitat.
But he had to live out of the rich because, unfortunately, he never had very good commissions from the government. So the problem of the architect of the poor is that he had to live out of the many commissions that he received from
No,
rich
I'm
people.
sorry. He never took one penny from anybody. If people made you believe that Hassan Fathy was commissioned, I'm sorry. Hassan Fathy, when anybody went to him to have a house, was interviewing the future client and not the contrary. He used to ask him, why did you come to me? What kind of architecture do you like? What do you know of historic Cairo? What monuments is your favorite? What piece of music do you prefer? And if he liked you, he gave you the house. He never took a penny, even from the wealthiest people. Never. And anybody that would say the contrary is simply, I'm sorry, lying.
Good.
He gave us the houses. He often made us presents. He gave me 2 doors for my apartment and 2 mashrabiyas. And he did the same with many, many people. He never took a penny. So he didn't live off the rich.
Oh,
He lived off some of the money he had done with Doxiadis. And he never took money from any budget for building anything. And of course, of the very few commission he got from the government, whatever little money he got from building Gurna, and however little money he got to building Bariz. But he never took money neither from Hafiz Shahira Mehrez, who was very wealthy and an important person in the court, or from the Sabah family that in many ways, for whom he built a house in Kuwait, or for the people from Saudi Arabia. He never took a penny.
Oh, that's very interesting to know, because that is a fact that not very well known. The fact that because he was working for many people in the world, I mean, not only in Egypt. That's very well to know.
He didn't take money when he built the New Mexico, the barbecue. He didn't take money. Not one private project was a source of income for him. He gave us. He never even made us pay the money for the drafting by younger architects who were around him. And the only thing was to give him presents.
Great. Shahira, I would like you, maybe you can make some comment about this picture, which of course we got there from the archives in the University of American University in Cairo, and we have Hassan Fathy here. Yes. What do you, I mean, the picture that we see here is a very westernized family with a lot of people. What do you, how is your impression about this family here, of the whole family? Do you have an opportunity to meet some of them, the brothers, the sisters?
I have to tell you that this is what Egyptian families in the 30s and 40s were looking like. They were all westernized. We have almost no pictures of, bourgeois or small or medium or grand bourgeois people dressed in traditional clothes, because by the end of the 19th century, everybody had abandoned them. So about his family, I met 1 or 2 of his brothers. Ali Bey was presenting programs, one of the pioneers of Egyptian radio. He was a musician, and he was one of the last people to be able to play a traditional instrument called tambour. So I assisted to performances made by Ali Bey Fathy. I met his brother Hussein Bey, who used to come once or twice a month, sometimes, because Hassan Fathy was extremely generous with his family. And though when I met him, he had little money, not a lot, the money he had made while working for Doxiadis, he left his land, the revenue of his land, to his brother Hussein. And he used to say, Hussein has children, I don't have anyone, so he should be getting the revenue of my land. It showed him also this kind of very generous attitude, and something that is in Egypt is not really very frequently found. You don't find brothers giving to brothers because they are in need. Usually, I'm trying to say, everybody keeps their land ownership, but he used to do this. I met his nephew, who was a very brilliant architect, but had immigrated to, he was Ahmed Fathy, immigrated to America, and Hassan was very sorry about it, because he used to say that among the many young architects he coached and helped, he used to say that Ahmed has fingers of gold. So he said he could have been a very important architect. But Ahmed moved to America, did Western studies, and when he came back during I think the 80s, he made a project, but unfortunately died in a road accident and never built anything.
I see.
So this is my acquaintance with some of his very close family. Also, by the end of his life, his niece and her husband were very frequently around him. So I met them also. When he went to hospital, we used to see them there, and I kept a bit, even after his death, a bit of a relationship with them, and then they passed away. So I knew some members of his family. We were also somehow interrelated, because one of his nieces had married somebody related to my family. So we knew them, but not very closely.
I see. Do you think that he was a solitary man? Because the idea that we have living in the Ablabib house in the last time is that he was always living with his cats, and this old maid that was taking care of him, always receiving people. We know that. We have read in the many reports that he was always receiving people from all over the world, offering tea, etc. But in a sense, he was a solitary man, hearing classic music, reading, etc. What is your idea of Hassan Fathy living in the Al-Labib house during that many years, almost for after he came back from Doxiadis around 62, he spent the last years in these quarters. How do your impression of these last years of Hassan Fathy?
I have to tell you that apart from the visit of Hassan, of his brother Hussein once every month or something for the revenue of the land, I never saw anyone of his family during the years where he was very active. Even with Ali Bey Fathi, his brother, who was a musician, I used to meet him in another group of people who were all interested in traditional music, Arabic music, which Hassan Bey was not. As you know, he was a great admirer of Western music. He used to say that these are the two brilliant creation of the two worlds, the music of the West and the architecture of the Middle East. Anyhow, but to go back to, yes, he was, I think, lonely, but he was solitary, but not lonely, because every day you used to have hordes of people coming to see him. I mean, 3, 4, everybody was coming. The youth from the universities were coming to talk about with him. Interviewers from different countries in the West were coming. So he was never really alone, except the last years, because he became gradually a bit deaf. He was not hearing well. And I think this is when the isolation really started, because for him, music was life. And when he couldn't listen to his music anymore, I think he locked himself inside. So the last 2 or 3 years of his life, he was very isolated in this way, but not before. Not when I met him in the 66 and 67. He had a very active life. He was all the time going to lecture to people, the Nubians, and then he was going to see people who were talking about ecology. I mean, he was very, very active, and I don't think he felt lonely.
This is the idea that the last years, how do you think that Hassan Fathy got the idea that he was recognized only in the very last year? Because the very last years of his life, I mean, he received the International Gold Award of International Architecture, the Aga Khan Prize, the Right Livelihood Award from Sweden, but only when he was in the 80s. This is one of thank you for putting this picture. This is one of the first drawing when he is still developing his style in the mid-30s. Still, he has not developed completely his style, the vaulted loggia, the dome, etc. But he is evolving from the international style that he has studied in the beginning to the last style. But going back to the last picture, to the last question, do you think that he felt recognized by the world or by the society, or do you think that he thought himself neglected by his society?
I think that he felt extremely, I was going to say saddened, and felt in a way, the only recognition he wanted was to help building rural Egypt in a sustainable way, in a way that was humanly comfortable and providing all the requirements of the peasants. And he didn't care that much about getting the degree, prices. I mean, he was happy when he got them, but he used to say, "Nul n'est prophète en son pays." No one is a prophet in his own country. And he used to be, I think, very bitter about this. He didn't want the glory to be glorified by people as an idealist. He wanted to have to save the Egyptian peasant by saving his habitat and providing him with a human habitat. And I think he died heartbroken. I don't think all of the prizes he got, they made his life easier. When I met him, after he had still some of the money from the Doxiadis, and the first Aga Khan award he got provided him with some cash, because you asked how he lived. He didn't live off us, the people for whom he built. What helped him was the money, for example, from the Arakan for sure. But he was not a material man, so he used to spend it right, left, and center. For example, I remember very well that in all his this Labana quarter where he lived, they were all very poor people, and they all were coming to him every time anybody was in need. He had a bell, a long bell that people could pull from the courtyard down because he was on the third floor. And once they rang the bell, he used to go out and say, what do you want? And they say, we can't pay the bill for the electricity, or my mother is sick and we don't have money for the physician, and so on. And he even had given order to one of the pharmacies down in this town next to the living areas where people were, to always send him the bills of people who could not pay. And he used to say that traditional city is human, while the zoning of the contemporary cities is cruel, because in the traditional city, the rich lives next to the poor. And therefore, there's no shame from taking from your neighbor, because neighbor relations are important so in the social structure, and they should not be felt as charity. So this is how he was, because again, against the current, as you are saying, he was always against the current, even in this.
This is very interesting because at the end, okay, this is the Doxiadis equistic science, which is, I think, very much what Hassan Fathy was looking for also, with his appropriate, what he called with the appropriate way of construction. It is very interesting that we see the whole life here, because in a way, Hassan Fathy was a sort of sociologist and anthropologist. Whenever he was going to build a house, he was going to take into account everything that was related to the house, the way the people were living, the way the people, even the sickness that the people were having. For instance, we see this in Nugurna, as you remember, how he was studying the bilharzia problem that they have there. So this was very important. Do you think do you remember him talking about the Greek life, the Doxiadis life, how he was remembering this Greek period? Because it was very interesting, because for the first time, Hassan Fathy was working projects in Iraq, in Iran, in Algeria, in many other places. He was working with the Doxiadis, and Doxiadis was also another man that was a little bit against the current. Do you remember him talking about his Greek years?
He talked about it, but I have to tell you, I don't remember a lot. But what I can remember is that it also, he had these phases, and I think that a lot of the project he planned for Doxiadis never knew. I'm trying to remember. In Pakistan, New Islamabad, New Baghdad, none of these were actually implemented. So in a way, he also felt frustrated. And I think this is one of the reasons where he was called back in a way to Egypt. He had to go back to the sources, his sources, and resource himself in Egypt and try to do something about Egypt, because then came the project of Bariz, which was again hopefully revival of traditional architecture, but using the best of contemporary science. Because as you said, at one time, he used the air towers, and he used the cross ventilation, and he used the mud brick isolation. So again, he felt that this was more appealing than simply building and maybe, very grand projects like New Islamabad or New Baghdad, and not implementing. I think this is what brought him back.
Okay, what can you tell us about the relation of Chanta Vedisian with you, with Hassan Fathy, one of the most lovely disciples of Hassan Fathy? What can you tell us?
I think that Chanta Vedisian, for me, was the real materialization of the ideas of Hassan Fathy. So in many ways, he was his real school. He implemented it. And I have to tell you that, for example, when you see how he Chant changed a lot when he became an adept of Hassan Fathy. First of all, he helped him. He gave to him. A lot of people, when they were around Hassan Fathy, were taking from him. They taking recommendation about their work. They taking correction about their plans. They use in I don't mean it in a nasty way, but they took from him. I think Chant is one of the very few who gave him a lot and who followed him like his son, taking care of him. I remember in 1987, before when Hassan Fathy was very sick and taken to hospital, Chant and myself were the only two people staying in hospital at night at the door of the intensive care in case he needed something or in case something happened. So Chant was very close. And I think that he did in plastic arts what Hassan Fathy tried to do in architecture. That is, he revived tradition and framed it and put it in a more contemporary context using stencils and using textiles and using a lot of things, but reviving the tradition of traditional, if you want, reviving the tradition and giving it a very contemporary framework. So this is what Hassan Fathy wanted for architecture, and this is what Chant did in plastic art. But the also very important thing about Chant is that he believed also in this giving to the others, to the fact that, for example, his relationship to copyright. Chant was saying traditional art varies or develops because what has been done by an artist is continued by another one. So it's a whole, how do you say, chain of passing the knowledge, passing the art, and not putting copyrights, preventing one artist to get inspired by another, because then you're plagiating it. Or he used to say that this is what Hassan Fathy used to say, the traditional art is a communal art. It represents the consensus of opinion of a nation. It grows and changes, and because of the one person passing the knowledge and the tradition to another, not protecting it by copyright and isolating it. And I think this is very typical of Western art, which is individual. Everybody projects what he feels or what he wants. In traditional art, you have both. You have the way you personalize the inherited legacy of the people before you. And this is why I think he is his real only pupil. I think in architecture, I'm sorry to say, a lot of people use the vocabulary of motifs of Hassan Fathy, domes, vaults, even mashrabiyas, stalactites, but these are a vocabulary of motif. This is not what creates architecture. Hassan Fathy believed that our architecture should be articulated, should be adapted to our weather, not particularly displaying arches and the vaults and domes. These were solutions, but not the configuration of space. And this is why I think Hassan Fathy and Chant were very closely connected.
Hassan Fathy, as you have mentioned very well, he was completely opposed to the idea of Orientalism. He was much more close to the rejection of the idea of the Western that they have. He was rejecting the Arabesque. And this now, which we are ending this part of the conversation, give us the idea of what Hassan Fathy was looking for, really. The very sober presentation of the matte brick structure with the pale colors. This is the C.V. Krier house that he built himself 40 kilometers west of Alexandria. And here we can see all the elements of the Hassan Fathy building already developed. The Nubian dome, the vault. Well, now we have passed now to another project, one of the last projects of Hassan Fathy, the Al-VQ Dar al-Islam Foundation in the United States, in New Mexico, which again give us the idea of this is the vault house, the dome, the courtyard, the masharabia made with brick, the doors, the Sabras door, the same Sabras door that we saw with the picture of Chantabedician. So this is the idea of what Hassan Fathy has of the hat of the real traditional house, vernacular house. and not the Arabesque, the Orientalistic house. So this is very interesting. What is your impression when you see these pictures?
I think that the ABQ project, apart from being, like many of Hassan Fathy's construction, extremely beautiful and making use of a lot of interesting traditional means to aerate, to introduce light and so on, also made a proof of something, because a lot of people in Egypt were saying, yeah, yes, you want us to build in mud brick, but this is becoming, this is underdeveloped ideas, and that mud brick is not solid enough, and that if there is like happens in Egypt every 10 years a major flood and or rain, how do you say, rainstorm, it demolishes the mud brick in Upper Egypt and people are without homes. But Hassan Fathy wanted to stabilize the mud brick. That is, he had gone to the National Research Center for Buildings in Doki, which is not very far from where I have my house, to every time he built in mud brick, to give them a composition of the mud brick and ask them to give him the proper composition to stabilize it, so that it will not melt with the first rain, so that it could withstand all kinds of temperature, from the very cold to the rain to the very hot. So he wanted to use science in cooperation or in conjunction with traditional means, and ABQ showed this, because I went to ABQ. He had asked me to go, when I went to the state, to see and to tell me what my impressions were. And when I was there, there was a snowstorm and in New Mexico, and all of the construction of New Mexico were under snow. And I went to ABQ, there was snow, but the Dar al-Islam was in perfect condition, and it withstood extremely well the snow, and nothing got spoiled. So I think it made his proof is that if you use science with tradition, you can get the best result. So in a way, it gave him the courage to stand in front of his opponents, because I have to tell you that a lot of the people, if not all of the architects now in important positions, that were also in important position 20 or 30 years ago, used to attack him, say that he is a man that wants to bring us backward, that he is a dreamer, that he should not even be allowed to talk. And now, because he has become more fashionable in Western sources, they all claim to be his friends, they all claim to have supported him. No one supported Hassan Fathy. No one, not one person. The only thing were the people who admired him, who was, as you said, paid clients and or people not in important official positions anyhow in Egypt. And even when Mr. Sadat asked him to build him this huge complex that he did in Nubia on Lake Nasser, I think that it didn't affect anybody. And I remember very well that at the time, Ahmed Osman, who was the bigger entrepreneur of Egypt, everybody used to laugh at him and everybody used to criticize him. No one supported him.
Okay, we are now finishing our conversation of this section. Later you will continue. And here we have the last years of Hassan Fathy. He is receiving the Aga Khan award. This is, at least we have the consolation that at the end of his life in the Western world and in many areas, he started to deliver speeches in Berkeley, in Paris, in London, in many other places. And at least we have the consolation that perhaps not in his country, as you mentioned, but in many other countries, he was recognized because of his example. Because one of the important things that you have just mentioned is the relation of Hassan Fathy with science. It is important to see the trend of Hassan Fathy and the way of Hassan Fathy has shown to us. For instance, in Zaragoza, when we make the international exhibition, we took many of his examples about how you can cool a building with the current of air, or how can you position a building trying to go west or sea, or these kind of things that are very important for architecture. Hassan Fathy was really the founder of all of them. And he was certainly a man of science. He was, of course, investigating how brick had to be done. And in fact, as you remember pretty well, he went back to the pharaonic times to see the Ramazan and to prove everybody how the old buildings of the Ramazan 3,000 years ago were still there with mud brick. So he was really clear in that respect. To finish, here we have the picture of Hassan Fathy in the very last years in the terrace of his house, the Al-Labib house. What is your impression when you see this picture of the old man receiving all of us?
He used to say, I live in a skyscraper.
We don't hear you, Shahira.
It's so beautiful. I say, Hassan used to say that he is very lucky because he lives in a skyscape, not in a landscape. Because when you went on top of it, on the terrace of this house, you could see the sky, the domes, and the minarets, and the configuration mixing the sky with architecture. So this was his private skyscape.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, what a beautiful picture. I mean, it's been lovely hearing you on this part and talking with Tono on part of his life and his biography. But as I wouldn't like to finish this session without having a look at the current Cairo and some of the buildings that are in place and can be seen and visited if anybody goes to the city. And for this, I'm going to just invite on the screen Cándido, who is the cultural attaché of the Spanish embassy, the Embassy of Spain in Cairo, and who, as I said at the beginning, was the facilitator of this encounter. And I would like very much, at least just a couple of minutes, because we don't have really much time left, but at least a couple of minutes to hear from both of you on I know you have really enjoyed, Cándido, you have enjoyed the last days spent with Shahira, going through the streets and to visit some of the buildings by Hassan Fathy. So I'm going to share some of the images that you share with us with your phone, because I think even they are spontaneous, but they are very, very good witnesses of what you were seeing. And please share with us, both of you, your thoughts on what you were visiting and seeing around Cairo. Just 1 second, I'm going to...
It is, I will pass now the phone to Cándido so he can ask, but it is very interesting that the houses that we are going to see, 2 of them belongs to what is called the stone period of Hassan Fathy, because
Absolutely.
Hassan Fathy not only built in mud brick, he also built in stone, and we are going to see 2 interesting houses of what is called the stone period. Please, Cándido, go ahead.
Yeah, we don't have much time, as I said. Let's be concise, but let's go through it. Yeah, what are we seeing here?
Well, first I want to praise your work from Casa Árabe. This is a great opportunity, and I do not want to continue without thanking again the generosity of Shahira. Shahira is a wonderful host and a wonderful friend of Spain, and she has transmitted to all of us her passion for Hassan Fathy, his work, and also his philosophy of life. On the pictures, something we did in the last few days, Shahira was very, very quick in arranging certain appointments to visit certain houses of friends. And the first thing I realized, and I want probably Shahira to comment, is when you get into Hassan Fathy's house, what you feel is warmth and welcoming and family or friendship.
I think you are right. I mean, these are houses which have a soul. You know, they are not houses that display simply decorative features. I think they have a soul because the architecture is itself part of the decoration. You know, it's there's nothing superfluous. You know, and this is what you feel when you enter and you see the house. So I'm very pleased that you felt it.
And thank you. And also, they have like certain environments or certain corners. So all the house is like a discovery. And that's something Shahira told us, not just in her house, but in her apartment, but everywhere you go to visit Hassan Fathy, there's this simplicity, there's the very luxurious simplicity which I think it takes you into sort of mood. So there's a room to read, there's a room to stay with friends, and everything is open. If you would be here in Shahira's apartment, all the doors are open. That's something magnificent.
I think that you are right, that the fact that you enter in a house where nothing, Hassan Fathy believed that when you enter, you should not see everything that is happening in the house, but discover it gradually, because it protects the interiority of the people who live, and it gives you the pleasure to discover and do a trip in the house. So I think that you felt this very strongly.
And also the things about nature and the dialogue with the house, and also the courtyard. A little bit of greenery inserted in the house, not too much, but that feels also the uniqueness, I think, of Hassan Fathy's works.
I think you are right. The fact that he wanted building to go with the environment. So you're going to find that his architecture in the countryside is very different from when it is the house of people who are using it as a reception room, from the house, let's say, of Hamid Saeed, that is the house of an artist. So the requirements change and his architecture changes. He used to say that, at least when he did my house, he used to say that doing a house is a common project between the person who's going to live and the architect. And he used to say, my role is to give shape to your wishes and to your needs. So he used to, this is why his houses differ from person to person, because every time the person is different. You recognize the vaults, you recognize the arches, but the configuration of the space is different.
That reminds me of how, for instance, another genius of architecture, Horta, the Belgian architect, started his projects. He started talking to the clients, and he started asking them, what do you do when you get into the house? Do you leave your keys? Did you leave the umbrella? Did you go to see your courier, your mail? And then what do you do? What sort of life you deal? You like light, you like entertaining. And through all that, all the philosophy, then he created. And I think, unfortunately, I didn't have the honor, the chance to meet Hassan Fathy, but his work, I think you can feel the spirit. Like, for instance, in this picture, Shahira told us about, air, shadow, and light, because there's a lamp there, and you have these.
This is your house, right?
Yes, the fact that he used these features to enhance and recreate the architecture. And I think this is what architects in the 20th century have discovered, is that architecture is a configuration of space. And even now artists have discovered this, so that artists do not make a painting or simply a sculpture, but they do something in 3 dimensions, where you have a ladder and a goat attached to it, and 3 stones on the floor, and a brass pot. I think that Hassan Fathy used his architecture and traditional architectural features to reanimate and create a configuration in 3 dimensions. And this is very particular and very, I think, avant-garde, because architects discovered this in the 20th century. Enzo Piano, for example, in his Basil Giacometti uses this, but it existed in architecture throughout the Islamic period, at least, and Hassan Fathy made use of it.
Yeah.
And also the fact of being in a very humble approach, that you can feel it in the architecture, and also the respect for environment. The fact that the houses barely need air conditioning, not air conditioning at all, because by opening windows and doors and the patios, everything is fresh. It can be even 5 or 6 degrees Celsius minus what it is outside. And the breeze is always in the house. That's a very, very, very specific attitude when you get into the house, and a very, very rich feeling that you have, and you feel very cozy.
Yeah, it's a pity that you both are not with us here, because the courtyard, which has partly some sun now because it is partly covered, is warm. But where I sit myself and Cándido is our back to this southern feature with the claustra, and we feel the air coming through, because he has created a cross ventilation between a southern thing, which is usually the air in Egypt comes from the north, but by intelligent use of drafts, he made me an air draft coming from the south. And it is quite exceptional. It's much cooler than being in the courtyard or being in the house. So I'm very happy that you pointed to that.
Actually, this is Cándido, what you mentioned is really the very important point that at the end of the day brought us to do this exhibition, because this language, this vocabulary of sustainability in all the fields, but precisely in architecture as something very important, is something so actual, no? So it's a preoccupation that everybody is trying to pursue it. And then we discovered that there is an architect, a prominent architect in Egypt that is very little known in Spain. He was known among the architects, and we have witnessed many visitors in the exhibition, but not among the general public. So it was very clever suggestion by the curator, by Tono, to Casa Árabe, to develop this exhibition to highlight precisely how contemporary he is, no? The Hassan Fathy, his legacy, how contemporary is still, and is a lesson to be learned and to be copied and to be studied. And so this is a little drop of water that we are trying to accomplish from Casa Árabe. So I
want to mention something brief. Take into account that now with the pandemic, we have also discovered the need of the current of air in the house. And many houses that are built in modern style, they cannot be open because the windows cannot be open. Hassan Fathy was adamant in saying that you have to use the air, the feng shui air to move around the house to cool down the houses. So even today, we are rediscovering another fact why Hassan Fathy is so important for us. Many old new buildings are again opening the windows, creating new to get the air into the building. So that is why so important Hassan Fathy message is even today. And another thing, and I finish there, is as I mentioned Shahira and Cándido before, another thing that he always said was about tradition. Tradition is, in fact, passer le bâton à la génération suivante. This is one of the important things that Hassan Fathy was always encouraging. Not to get the copyright, as Shahira was saying, but trying to get the old tradition to the next generation. This is what Hassan Fathy was doing for all of us.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we have to leave it here. As I said, I'm sure we could be talking for hours with you, Shahira, and so but it cannot be this time. Maybe we can arrange a second conversation, but not. We have to stop now here. So we thank you so much. I don't want to finish without mentioning. I don't want to forget that the exhibition has been accompanied by the release of a beautiful book catalog. And we have done a great effort doing it a bilingual version. So it is a book. Thank you, Tono. Thank you very much for showing it. It's bilingual in Spanish and Arabic, and it's been published with the great support of the Institute, the Egyptian Institute of Islamic Studies in Madrid, which is an institution dependent of the Ministry of Higher Education from Egypt. And of course, the Embassy of Egypt in Madrid has been also very much involved. The translations have been done by Dr. Rasha Ismail, and we thank her very much for her great effort on doing this a bilingual edition. So I think Cándido is going to take the task now of trying to present this and distribute this in Egypt. And we will be very happy to accompany that as well. So thank you very much, Tono. Thank you very much, Cándido. And of course, thank you so much. It was a great pleasure, Shahira, for joining us and sharing with us your beautiful knowledge and experience with Hassan Fathy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have to tell you that as I consider myself an extension, a small extension of Hassan Fathy, I have to thank you for the work you're doing to promote his ideas and to rehabilitate his image, because he needs, in the Arab world, he needs to be rehabilitated. As I was telling Cándido, I don't know if he studied in Egyptian university, and this is something very sad. So thank you for being this positive, giving you this input, positive inputs that you gave. Thank you very much to Tono and to you.
Thank you. Be well and see you soon, I hope. Bye.
Thank you. In Cairo.
Bye. Thank you, Tono. And thank you, Nuria.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.